and welcome to Hepburn's In Conversation with Amazing Australian Women series. I'm Sushmita Sharma and I have an amazing Australian woman with me. Her name is Sally McGrath and she is a certified health coach in the world of wellness. Let's welcome Sally. Hi Sally, how are you?
Hi Sushmita, how are you? Thank you.
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. So Sally, tell us something about your business. And I know it's Health That Heals. So how did you come up with the idea and what led you to start this business?
Sure, yeah. Health That Heals is something that is first-hand experience for me. Years ago when I was running another business, so I was the director in the business, I got incredibly involved in it and in a nutshell to the point of burnout. So I sold my share of the business and moved out of that particular business. And health and wellness has always been a passion for me, something that I've always followed and always been interested in, read a lot, studied a lot. And when I left the business, the prior business, I was basically in a state of burnout, very unwell and just not in a healthy space at all. So Health That Heals is the culmination of me healing myself and now sharing my years and years of learnings with others and coaching others to make the same improvements to their health and well-being.
That's very personal for you to start something that inspired you personally. So it's really great. Was it challenging for you to leave the corporate world and then step into something that you're starting and you're building?
I had mixed feelings. Obviously, I knew the corporate environment, and starting again was in some ways exciting, but also in some ways a little bit scary. There's no denying that. But I was very passionate about what I'd been through and preventing other women from going through that same experience. So that was my, and still is my primary focus. And I'm just passionate about, you can have a career, you can be ambitious, but you don't need to become, so wedded to the role that you burn yourself out. You have no quality of life, and life all becomes about work. It's just not, it's not sustainable, and it's certainly not healthy.
And how do you stay motivated to your goal?
I have implemented, and as I say to my clients, I practice what I encourage them to build into their daily rituals. So I am an advocate of what I call daily movement. So some people relate more to movement, some people relate more to the word exercise. So starting my day with some form of exercise for me is a form of meditation and a chance to get out in the fresh air and just have a set point for the day. I tend to love getting out early. So you tend to, what I find is I wake into the day, if you like. So starting early and then embracing my day. Throughout my day, I'll certainly take some time to practice some meditation. I also try and factor in yoga where I can, because I find that's very good for general stretching and also, keeping the mind chatter balanced and taking that time out, what I call my Zen time. And overall, I implement some kind of self-care into my daily ritual as well. So self-care to me and how I coach my clients doesn't need to be expensive. It doesn't need to be a day spent, with a beauty therapist, although that is lovely sometimes if you choose to do that. But self-care to me is even just taking some time out and just sitting for 5 minutes, deep breathing. You might choose to, go for a walk and listen to a podcast that you like, or just time out in nature. So just that few minutes that gives you the moment to regroup and then get on with whatever your day.
So my next question is, how COVID-19 changed everything for every business. So what kind of challenges did you face?
Yeah, look, COVID-19 definitely, has changed the way we all live and work. For me, it definitely brought about some challenges in the way that I was interacting with clients. There was certainly a lot of fear that came up in clients. But even more on the positive side, even more awareness of health and the importance of preventative health. So that was a challenge and a gift, because it was then entering that space of really listening and providing support for so much change that was going on in people's lives. So COVID-19 in many ways brought a lot of gifts for me. It certainly, personally, it gave me time to have more time with immediate family and, relationships. And also, I think for me and for many of my clients, it was a great time to reconnect with people that you perhaps hadn't seen for so long. The video conferencing mechanisms that we were then, so accessible to and still are. And the gift of time, everyone had more time to make those connections again. So sure, there's challenges, but I think out of challenges, there's also great gifts and learnings.
That's really wonderful. So speaking of time, and I see that your sign behind you says it's before it's too late. So do you have any suggestions for people who are, always busy in their businesses, in their career? They're so ambitious that they sometimes forget to take care of themselves. So do you have any suggestions for those people, like how to find time within your day to take care of yourself?
A great question. And it's something that I'm really passionate about, because through experience, as I've shared, my belief is that if you don't take that time for yourself, then you will end up going down the path of burnout. You will end up sick. And if you don't address it still, you will end up chronically ill. So the body certainly has a way of speaking louder and louder when something's not right. Carving out that space, absolutely critical. And it's more a case in the way I practice of removing habits that have been created over a long period of time, and that belief that, I don't have time. You actually do. And there are ways and strategies that I bring that into busy women's lives. There's a lot of women I work with that are self-employed, senior managerial roles, and they do have a lot on their plate career-wise. Many of them are mums, their wives, their sisters, their friends. So what I teach them is harmony rather than balance. I think balance is a bit of a faux pas. Finding work-life balance, in my mind, is like a seesaw. To get that perfect alignment is unrealistic. Life is always going to be, moving and ebbing and flowing. So in what I teach or what I should say, what I coach and suggest is finding the harmony and developing rituals that you crowd out the poor habits and replace them with what I call, and what I referenced before, self-care, and implementing much better habits. So you do feel that you have that time for you, because, as I say to my ladies, you cannot serve from an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty cup. So if your cup's not full, then it's very challenging to be.
So there's a note for our viewers: find time for yourself, and you find your perfect harmony within your schedule. And now, Sally, my next question to you would be, can you describe some of the failures that have shaped your success?
And failure, failure is always an interesting question, and an interesting experience, because failure is generally met with negativity. And one thing that I've learned is failure is a lesson. Failure for me, I've chosen to reframe and really look into it and go, okay, what is the lesson here? Something clearly hasn't worked, and there must be a reason, there must be a lesson in it. So failure for me specifically was definitely becoming a workaholic in my previous business. And, you know, through being a workaholic just led to complete lack of self-care. I had these massive expectations, and that leads to perfectionism. So undoing that those behavioural issues was something that I had to work on, and something that I now coach into to my clients. So failure in itself, I tend to reframe. And specific failure for me was allowing myself to become a workaholic.
That's a very good take on failures, and giving it a positive perspective. That's shows how positive you take life as.
Absolutely.
So my next question is, what inspires you, or who inspires you the most in life?
I have what inspires me is really learning from my experience and sharing those to support other women from going down the path that I have. It's not fun. It's really challenging. It's confronting, and there is a lot of loss that has happened there. Women that inspire me in particular, and even recently, the leader of the state premier, I should say, of New South Wales currently. I think she's been quite a resilient and unprecedented times. And challenging times, you know, bushfires, floods, COVID. And I think she's come through that really resiliently, you know, held her head high. As she said, she's made decisions that haven't appealed to everybody, but she's made them, owned them, and gone with them. So she's probably a woman that I admire most at the moment. Other women that I admire are women that have become mentors to me. So 2 women in business. And one started a business because she wanted to be home more to raise her 2 children, and has moved on to be a very successful woman in business, and now an advisor to a board. So that for me is inspirational. And the other lady is also somebody that I've worked with for many years, and is now a mentor, and she built her business from well, and is now in the wonderful world where she has to say no to work and offer it to other colleagues in her industry. So they're definitely inspiring women, and what I find through inspiration is they're realistic women as well. I think and a very famous woman that inspires me too is Audrey Hepburn. Her kindness and her elegance and grace is something that I admire and aspire to myself. So, yeah.
So it has been a challenging time for every woman, and in fact everyone, especially in Australia because of the bushfires and then COVID-19, and we've lost so many people. And I think during these challenging times is when we see true courage and true resilience that our Hepburn women have shown. And speaking of challenges, do you plan to restructure your business to meet the current needs and trends of your clients, or like how are you dealing with the challenges that they're facing?
As far as restructuring my business, there's no particular demand for that right now. What I find is adapting to my clients' needs so I can support them. And that's what I do find through my coaching program, Thrive and Alive. I do have a platform that I use, but then it's so critical to adapt that to what the particular woman is experiencing, and where there are areas in her, what I call primary health, that need to be worked on. So yeah, it's more adapting to my clients' needs rather than restructuring the business at this point in time.
Can you take us through your coaching program and what's it about, and what do you do usually? Or is it specific to each individual?
Sure. Well, the Thrive and Alive program is my signature program. And what I do is take my clients through what I call a primary health analysis, which identifies the areas that they really need to crowd out poor habits that have come in through years and years. So I start with a level of primary health, which covers 16 sectors of their health. And we take a key 4 areas of those areas that I call the circle of life. And interestingly, and my clients were always surprised by this, it starts without nutrition. And I'm a believer in that nutrition is fantastic, but if you haven't got the harmony in your primary health, then what I call secondary health won't work its magic. I believe that I'm a case in point for that. During my experience, I felt I was healthy, I was eating well, but I still burnt out. So I was, stressed out. I had toxic relationships, inconsistent exercise. So that's what I apply to the program that I implement. And it's rewarding because I take my clients through a 10-session program. Halfway through, we do an evaluation and just check in to see the progress from session 1 to session 5. And often that's met with shock, positive shock, and almost a disbelief at how far they've come, because it's just such an improvement through each session. And then we carry on to session, through from session 5 into 10. And what I tend to find is the improvement just builds and builds and builds. So by the end of the program, these women have certainly made some substantial inroads to improving their health, to be ready then to take on a nutritional lesson.
That's quite interesting. So a lot of people think that, when they think of health, they think it's physical. If I'm exercising, like you said, if I'm exercising, if I'm eating well, if I'm drinking enough water, that's healthy. I'm a healthy person. But it's not more like that. It's more holistic approach.
Yes.
And so mental health and every other emotional health is a very big challenge too for a lot of people. So how do you define a healthy person?
Well, it's interesting because health and well-being have been used widely in the industry, certainly for probably the last 5-10 years, health and well-being. And as you say, health has generally been defined by, how many times you go to the gym and what are you eating. And whilst that's important, I don't believe that fits into what I call a well-being frame. So well-being in my mind is that balance. It's that balance of primary and secondary health. So everything that goes on in your head needs to be in harmony with what you're putting into your body. So for me, as I said, it's very much primary and secondary health. And also it is preventative health. So in my mind, prevention is the way forward. There are so many illnesses that can be prevented. And you just need to look at, the global health system, and the pandemic is an example of that. So, the more people we can keep out of hospital and offer them preventative health measures and support, then the healthier our world's going to be. So, and that might be, there's various philosophies on, eat a plant-based diet, eat a protein diet, eat this, eat that. I think the other philosophy that I have is I don't believe in the word diet. I think in a well-being sense, diet immediately says deprivation. So when you're on a diet, for some reason, you can't have this and you can't have that. And
it's very restrictive. Yeah.
It is. It's very restrictive. And as soon as the head catches on to you can't, the desire for that becomes, more than ever.
Absolutely.
So, so I think eliminating the word diet and really balancing primary and secondary health to get that well-being factor is important through preventative health.
I totally agree with that. Tell us something about your book. How do you convey this message to people?
The book is very much a self-help guide. Again, as I said, it focuses on that primary health before it focuses, and it just focuses on that primary health. It doesn't even go into nutrition, this particular book. And I've framed it in a way that I share the lessons through an experience. So there is a part of my story in there, and how I've come to these realizations and these lessons, and then how there's a part that people can use to apply them to their life. So undoing perfectionism, removing guilt are just two examples of some how-to guides that are in the book. And the reason I called it Transform Your Life Before It's Too Late is because once it's if it's too late, you will end up ill. And it's highly likely you'll end up with a chronic illness, which, as we know, can be in the form of cancer, which leads to, trauma management, which leads to hospitalization. So it's what I call a red flag. It's time to do something about your health.
So Sally, you're in an industry which requires a lot of discipline from the client and the willingness to improve themselves. So how do you deal with that challenge when the client is not ready? What do you do?
Yeah, good question. Really good question. In my mind, because I have a screening process before I will coach a client. So we do a 30-minute call to determine, they get to know me a bit more, I get to know them a bit more, and we get a brief outline of what their challenges are. From that space, we move into a 90-minute session and really identify where the points are that need work. So for me, it is all about the person being ready to make the change and being coachable, because change is a challenge. And what I find is I can identify at that second point if a client or a potential client is willing to commit to the program, fundamentally commit to themselves, to say, yes, I do have challenges here that need to be changed, and this is a safe environment with Sally to support that change. So once I identify that, I can then hold the space for the person to download all their concerns and download to me what has caused all these issues in their life. And it also gives them a sense of support. I also offer an accountability, because one thing I feel that's lacking in our personal world is one-on-one support and a level of accountability. So, which is where a coach is very supportive, and it's as I say to my clients, each week is showing up for you. So it's critical to that they put that in their diary, and it's a session each week that is not negotiable. It's for them, about them, and it's like a meeting. You'd show up for a meeting, so show up for yourself. And that's where I see improvement. That's where I see momentum build, and see the shift and the positive changes in my clients.
It's very inspiring. Yes, it's an inspiring.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. So dealing with clients, from what you said, I can see communication, empathy, and accountability are the key to having a good relationship with them. But would you like to describe any challenges that you've faced when dealing with clients? If there's any kind of challenge in specific?
Yeah, definitely. I find as we work through the program, things surface. They could challenges surface, and it could be there are triggers in people that are clear identifying factors that there is underlying pain or fear. Generally, it's fear coming up and a reluctance to change because they're so used to operating in that way. So also, some people get to the point where they're ready to make some change and they're resistant to other change. So I have worked with some clients that have just said, at this point, I'm not ready to go forward. They've had multiple illnesses going on. So there is a point where I will suggest to a client and refer them to another health professional in my network if they would like that, or suggest that they go and speak to their general practitioner for referrals to other health experts, because sadly there are some issues that need to be dealt with on a higher level of professional support.
So it was great talking to you, Sally. And as my last question, do you have any message for our viewers who are also business women? Any kind of suggestion or recommendation that you would like to make for them that would help them moving forward in their business?
Sure. I find, especially a lot of the women that I work with, they are in that self-employed corporate environment. So I think my key message is be strong in that channeling into your feminine energy is not a weakness, it's a strength. So much of our time is spent in business channeling into that masculine energy and operating in that masculine energy. And that has an important role to play. Equally does the feminine energy. And leaning into that feminine energy is so important. So what I often say to my clients is lean into your feminine energy and always be kind to yourself.
So that's the perfect key takeaway for our viewers. And I thank you again, Sally, for joining us today. It was a great conversation with you.
Thank you. My pleasure. I hope it inspires some women to really nurture themselves or reach out for the support that they need.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we will be right back with you with another interview. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.